What's up, everybody? It is that time of the week again. Your esteemed co-hosts, myself and Uncle Buck, Drew Gann, are here for another jam-packed edition of the Two Buck Sports Podcast. I want to welcome in my colleague, Drew. How's everything going down there in North Mississippi?
Man, everything's good. Weather's good. It's pretty outside. I can't really complain about too much. I had a crazy slam-packed busy weekend in which we spent a lot of time on the road. So this week has been one of those weeks where the work week is more relaxing than the weekend. And so it is Wednesday. I've got a couple good nights sleep under my belt, and so I'm feeling pretty good. How's South Carolina?
Yeah, it's good, man. Weather's nice. It's going to be warm. Got pretty warm today. Tomorrow's going to be a little bit cooler for the last time, I think, for the year. And then we're going to be back up in the 80s and going to play some golf this weekend, be outside, enjoy some of that beautiful weather. And I know you got out and celebrated some this weekend, but want to wish a happy belated Mother's Day to all our mothers out there that are fans of the show listening in, especially to our moms and Drew's wife, Haley. Happy Mother's Day. We wouldn't be the same without y'all in our lives. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we've both got great mothers, and I have an amazing wife and mother to my kids. They were well treated this weekend, I'll tell you that. Me and my father stepped up to the plate Sunday and cooked dinner and cleaned up the table afterwards. And so,
wow,
you're welcome. Haley, you're welcome. Mama, you're welcome. Don't get any crazy ideas, but I'm just kidding. So, yeah, we had a good. I don't think this is braggadocious, but kind of the way that I show love. Lots of people talk about love languages, and I don't know that I necessarily buy it wholeheartedly, but I do love giving gifts, and so it was a fun weekend to where I could just kind of hang out with Haley and appreciate her. So. But that's enough talk. She comes up on this podcast way too much. This is not a sports and wife podcast. This is a sports podcast. And so, Rusty, I think we're going to lead this off. It was such a hit last week, our fan questions, and we got a few more today. Yeah. And so, hit me with those. I have not heard these questions. And so, here we go.
We got some good ones tonight to lead off with. So we're going to start going back to Cousin Kirk, listening to us out there while he protects our highways and byways in Mississippi as a highway patrolman. We appreciate your service, Kirk. At least I do anyway. You speak about your cousin, but here we are. Why is there such an inflation problem in the northeast part of the country?
Good Lord. I don't know.
This is a sports podcast, man. We ain't into politics.
He's never been to the northeast part of the country. Where's he getting his information?
Maybe is Instagram? It bad in Alcorn County? Is it something that's going on in the northeast part of the state? Maybe.
I mean, groceries have went up, but I think that's a nation problem. But if you're asking me to dissect why, yeah. I don't know. Maybe everybody's getting greedy.
Yeah, that sounds about right. We get a lot of people that come down here in South Carolina from the Northeast complaining about the taxes, or we're coming down here for the warmer weather and the cheaper taxes. So I know it's an issue. Don't really know what's driving it, but it's making my roads and my commute to and from work a lot worse. It's all I got to say.
Yeah, you're going to have to sell that big Dodge and get you a Prius.
Dude, I need a bike. Lord. All right. Question number 2, and this is. I want you to put your thinking cap on for this one, all right? This is a tough one, a very philosophical question, and everybody knows that this is an intelligence podcast, not just a sports podcast.
If you need your life questions answered, you've come to the right spot.
Absolutely. Question number 2 from Cousin Kirk. What happens when you get scared half to death twice?
I guess you die. But
I guess you're officially scared to death.
To me, I don't think it's realistic to say that because you don't know what whole death feels like.
Yeah.
So you think you got scared half to death, but you don't really know because you've never died. Has anybody ever been scared to death, literally?
I mean, I'm sure someone's gotten scared and had a secondary issue come up, like their heart stopped or their brain stopped. So, I mean, that can happen.
So why is the expression not, I got scared halfway to a heart attack?
Death sounds scarier, I think. Not that a heart attack's not scary, but I got scared to death sounds way scarier.
Yeah. I mean, common math tells me if you get scared half to death twice, then you found death.
You know, And I think it depends on timing, right? Like if you're scared half to death back to back, I think you're screwed and you really have been scared to death. But if there's some time in between, you maybe like
You
recharge your batteries a little bit, right?
yeah. You've recovered from the first half death, and
Yeah.
now you can have another half death experience.
Yeah. You know, we all
But
need those little like life and energy bars above us, like in the old video games, like Mortal Kombat, so we'll know what we're dealing with when we run into people, and that'd be a good way to see it. If your life bar goes down halfway, you better not get scared again.
yeah, same way with I just need like the fatigue bar, like you got in like 2K, once that fatigue bar, you can't hit any shots,
Right.
and I need that just so everybody in my family knows, like, don't ask me to do nothing.
Maybe that's what happened to DeAndre Ayton. His fatigue bar was low, and he had to reset on the baseline.
I think that if he said that, it would still be a cop out. He just he didn't want to be there.
He just didn't want that smoke. Yeah. That's it. So yeah, all long and short of it, to all of our fans out there, keep your head on a swivel and don't get scared half to death twice.
Yeah, that's true.
Kirk again. Why won't the government release the name of the second gunman from the grassy knoll?
Oh, so he thinks there was a second gunman.
Uh-huh.
Do you think there was a second gunman?
I think it's plausible.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to convince me that just one pulled off one of the most high-profile assassinations in the history of our country.
I just think one of the biggest failures in America was letting Jack Ruby shoot Lee Harvey Oswald outside the hospital, because that's where everything went wild. Maybe Lee Harvey Oswald, if you believe that there was a second gunman or that the mob was, behind it, then maybe Lee Harvey Oswald was a pawn and didn't know the whole plan anyways. But he's the guy that I don't want to ask. He's the only guy you could ask. I think they know. I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. I think they know what happened.
And I think they could be involved. I don't necessarily know that it's the mob, but I wouldn't. There's been some pretty plausible evidence that the government had something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, evidence is quote in quotes, finger quotes evidence with this, because everybody's got evidence.
Right.
Not evidence is necessarily applicable. And that's what happens when you leave cases open this long with no answers, is everybody's got an answer. Maybe it's UFOs, maybe it was aliens, maybe the whole government is just lizard people. Yeah. Maybe all birds are fake. I mean, all these questions need to be answered.
And that's what happens when you leave it open and you get real hush hush about it. Questions come up, people want to know the answer, and people are going to ask and try and figure it out. And then you get these tinfoil hat guys sitting in their trailers with nothing else to do, watching the aliens fly by, and then they come up with these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and let me be honest with you and tell you, maybe it's kind of a hot take, I don't know, but I don't believe that the American public needs to know everything.
No, I don't disagree.
Now, a presidential assassination may not fit into that category, but there's a lot of things that go on that maybe we don't need to know.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, there's a lot of things that they cover up that we probably do need to know. So allow me to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. But, there's some things that's probably happened that I just don't need to know about.
If we were a good podcast, we drop in the clip of Jack Nicklaus from A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth right here. Yeah. But, we're a redneck podcast. You get what you get.
Yeah, we don't have that kind of technology. Let me guess. The next question from Kirk.
One more from Kirk before we move on. And I like this question. This is a good sports thought question. So the 1998 home run race saved baseball after the strike and bad baseball throughout the 90s.
Right.
So it begs the question, should steroids be encouraged for baseball since it sparked the great home run race of 1998?
Should they be encouraged? No.
Should they be encouraged for baseball? No. That's the question. But should they be allowed, I guess, is another question.
No. All right. So here. So, yes, you're right. The steroid era in baseball is probably the best era of baseball, along with like the Attitude Era and the WWE. Anytime you have something that great, it probably needs to be, it's probably not good for public consumption at the same time. So, yeah, but steroid era baseball was great. And I believe that steroids need to be in baseball. Because hitting, it's just like football. The hardest hits are the most fun to watch, and the balls that get hit the furthest are the most fun to watch.
Yeah.
And baseball's got a real identity crisis here. And so, yeah, I think it'd be cool that if there were steroids in baseball. However, you can't encourage that people take steroids. However, maybe you just quit talking about it and just let it happen and don't test. And it's kind of like the NBA did for weed. Like they quit testing for marijuana because you know it's weed. Who cares? And everybody's going to do it, and all you're going to have is the best players get suspended.
Yep.
For recreational use. Steroids has a worse effect on your body, and so you can't encourage it. But yeah, maybe just
Look the other way.
look the other way.
Yeah, I mean, they're adults and they're making decisions on what they want to do and put in their body with these performance enhancing drugs, and it doesn't make them necessarily better with hand-eye coordination. Barry Bonds could mash baseball. He could hit baseballs before he got yoked. He could just hit them a lot further after he got on steroids. And so I agree. I'm of the school of thought maybe we don't encourage it and push it on them, but without steroids, you don't get guys like Ken Caminiti that don't have a neck that just walk up there and mash baseballs.
Yeah.
Because you'll always have the guys like Tony Gwynn that can just flat hit, Ken Griffey Jr. that can just flat hit. But you get a guy that hits the ball.
Celebrated anymore.
No.
Guys like
sad.
Tony Gwynn. Pure
Tony
baseball
Gwynn.
Players aren't celebrated anymore if you can't hit home runs to all parts of the field.
Yeah, and Tony Gwynn is I'm a huge Tony Gwynn fan, man. And like Kyle Schwarber last year struck out more times in one season than Tony Gwynn did from 1990 to 1999. And it's just wild how, like, if you really think about that, like Tony Gwynn only struck out like 100 and something times. Like it's ridiculous how often how little he got struck out, and then you see guys are just up there swinging away and hacking away. So
this is
like that gets overlooked far too often in what is a talent-ridden sport.
Over a 20-year career, Tony Gwynn struck out 434 times, an average of 21.7 strikeouts per season.
That's wild, man.
And there was one more stat. I'm going to paraphrase it while I'm trying to look it up at the same time. So John Smoltz was on a podcast, and he was talking about the greatness of Tony Gwynn. And what it was so wild is that he said that Tony Gwynn faced Smoltz, Glavine, and Pedro, and combined against them in their career, he struck out 6 times.
Yeah, that's some talent.
And including John Smoltz never struck him out.
Yeah. There was Greg Maddux has a famous quote about him, and he's talking about just hitters in general, and he was like, all hitters can pick up arm slots, and they can pick up spin on the ball, and they can pick up wrist action as pitchers are releasing the balls, but nobody can pick up speed, like real speed of the ball. He said, except that bleeping Tony Gwynn.
Right.
Was the only one that could pick up that speed like that and know exactly what was coming.
Probably the most underappreciated baseball player in the last 50 years.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, he kind of got not swallowed up, but he got forgotten about because of the steroid era.
Well, and the Padres were never, I mean, they were like a wild card team. They were never great.
Right.
It's like Mike Trout. He was buried on a bad baseball team on the West Coast and just never got out. And really, like, he got some hype, but there were guys like Wade Boggs and played for Boston, and obviously Ken Griffey Jr., Alex Rodriguez, these other guys that were getting more hype in bigger markets. And all Tony Gwynn did was just get on base.
Yeah. Tony Gwynn is a forgotten hero. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
He would have been the guy that would have the best stories to tell as he got older. It's the thing you kind of miss about Kobe as well. Yeah. It's like he was taken so young from us when he, and Tony Gwynn did coach, for a little bit, but
at his alma mater.
And so when he's old, the stories that they could tell,
Yeah.
that was really robbed from us and from humanity as a whole,
Yeah. Yeah. So R.I.P. Tony Gwynn. But we've got 2 last more philosophical questions to get us more introspective, Drew, before we dive into our sports talk. From my buddy Caleb. Caleb is a real estate agent. It's a free little shout out for you, Caleb, here in Myrtle Beach. He will sell you a house, sell your home, love where you live, MB on Instagram. Big shout out to Caleb.
Hey, quit giving out ads. If he wants an ad, tell him to pay for it.
That's his one freebie.
Okay. If you want to shout out next week, you got to pay us.
That's right. Caleb, you're listening. You gotta pay us for next week. All right. So first question, you're a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Where do babies come from?
You want me to show you? Oh, they come from the Lord, and
And the stork, right?
and from from very sensitive areas. I found they can, yeah. Just from personal experience, I can tell you that they can be pulled out as well.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. All right. Where do babies come from? You heard it here first. Our
yeah,
resident dad. I don't have kids, so I can't answer.
yeah. I'm telling you, the pictures you see on Facebook are nice and sweet and everything. Let me tell you from experience, about an hour earlier, that was not pretty.
And immediately after, right? It was
Yeah,
chaos.
yeah. No, immediately after, it's perfect.
Mm.
The second before, it was, it could not be shown on HBO.
Yeah, social media is not reality. Just
No,
a reminder. They're
no, it's
screaming
not.
behind every sweet picture is a screaming child.
Just a short story. So, you talked about everything's not for social media. When we had Jenny, we didn't post a picture for like, I don't know, 24, 30 hours afterwards. We were just like, this is our baby. We had her at like 8:30 at night. And so we made it through like the night, the next day, and then the next morning we woke up and my dad was the one to be like, "Will you hurry up and post it so I can brag on my daughter, on my new granddaughter?" I was like, "Dad, this is for until we post this on Facebook. This is just ours, baby.
Mhm.
Like it's just mine and Haley's baby.
Yeah,
And
I
so
remember.
we
I got
drug
the
our feet. Yeah,
I got the picture in the text and did not see. I kept checking social media to see when it was going to pop up, and it didn't for a while. But I will say this: Drew does have one of the cutest babies in the world, La Miss Jenny.
yes,
Real sweet, real cute. Looks like her mama, thankfully.
thankfully, yes.
All right, last one. This might be my favorite one. Drew, do fat bottom girls really make the world go round?
You dang right.
Absolutely, they do.
What are you talking about? Freddie Mercury may have loved the different sex, but he was right about this one.
He may have been attracted to his own sex, but he was dead on with this song, man.
I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, that could be written in scripture. It's just true.
That's in the man laws 101, man. Fat bottom girls.
Yeah, yeah. But that song was probably written by Brian May, not Freddie Mercury.
No.
But
Freddie Mercury was like, "Are you sure?"
just trust me on this one, Fred.
Just trust me on this one. You're gonna want to sing it.
Yeah.
R.I.P. to another legend, Mr.
Yeah.
Freddie Mercury. There.
Yeah.
Before we dive in a little bit further, Drew, we got a little bit of exciting college news. Everybody knows, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, that we are a college golf podcast. Golf first. That's all we talk about. College golf. We've been following it all year long. We dove into it on a couple episodes ago, if you were paying attention. And your Mississippi State Bulldogs, men and women, both advanced out of the regionals, going to compete for a national championship in golf. Big shout out to our men's and women's golf teams winning today in the tournament to head forward. It wraps up on the 22nd. The men are going to head to Scottsdale. I'm not sure where the women are going to play at, but big shout out Mississippi State men's and women's golf. It is golf season after all. We're a golf school. This is a golf podcast. Go Dogs.
Yeah, Ole Miss lost in a playoff today in the semifinals, and so on hole 8 in the playoff, and so no, we've got a national championship in golf already. So I guess we'll let you have one.
Hey, y'all got that one. We'll get this one. We got baseball first, then y'all got baseball. It's only fair, I guess.
Yeah, for the longest, Mississippi State's men's baseball team won the first team national championship in Mississippi State history. Mm-hmm. It was women's golf for us. It was our first team national championship. Well, I guess
you claimed those football ones back in the 60s.
Yeah, those count.
But that was back when Alabama claimed 12 before World War I. Everybody shares national championships back then.
That was I think it may have been before integration, so
and they gave ESPN gave Mississippi State one back in 1947, and we did go 8-0-1, but we didn't win a national championship that year.
Yeah, I claim Ole Miss's national championships. However, if there's not a championship game, they're kind of with an asterisk anyways. Yeah. That's back in the day where whoever came out there wasn't a championship game. It was based on polls. And if you finished the year, that's why there were so many ties, shared national championships,
Yeah. And I just got a notification that Alabama has claimed another national championship.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that makes 60.
Yeah. Who's counting?
Yeah.
And then one other little oddball news before we really address the elephant in the room that we need to address. Did you see that we had a second bird casualty on a baseball field today?
No, I didn't. We have another Randy Johnson situation.
We have another Randy Johnson situation. So for our listeners, if you haven't seen it, it's a grainy 1990s video, but Randy Johnson in the middle of a spring training game rears back, and he was a flamethrower, known for his 100+ mile an hour fastballs.
6'10" left-handed pitcher, threw it 101.
Mullet, big mustache, intimidating on the mound, gigantic Adam's apple because he was 6'10" and weighed 110.
Yeah, the big unit.
Let go of a fastball, and about the time a pigeon decided to fly in the path of that ball, and if you haven't seen the video, you can imagine how it ends. All of a sudden, it's a ball of feathers. That's it.
It's almost as if it was cartoonish.
Mm-hmm.
The way, because you only see feathers burst like that in cartoons, but it was like the bird combusted, and then you just see it rolling on the ground featherless while the feathers drop to the turf.
Absolutely. He deleted that bird from this atmosphere.
It's one of the greatest sports anomalies of all time. And I know PETA can, yell at us, whatever. Honestly, if PETA retweets us, that'd be great because that's big, they've got a big following of nuthead. But it's one of the craziest things that's ever happened in sports. It's on the Mount Rushmore that you can hit a bird flying perpendicular to you with a 101 mile an hour fastball. You could give him 1 million tries to do it on purpose.
Yeah.
And he couldn't do it.
I always said that that's a once in a lifetime thing. We will never see that again until today.
Okay. Is this on Twitter?
It's I got a notification from ESPN about an hour ago is what made me think of how I found out about it. But Zach Gallen for the Arizona Diamondbacks was warming up, and unintentionally he was warming up in the outfield before Arizona's game in Oakland today. He threw a curveball to the catcher as the ball was coming in. Bird came in mid-flight. RIP said bird. The throw was captured by cameras. So there should be a video out there. I have not seen the video. I just saw this about an hour ago when I was leaving the gym before we started our podcast here. But apparently it happens more than once.
I just saw the video.
Is it iconic?
No. He's long tossing in the outfield, and it's caught from the bleachers. And so they do have it in slow motion with the bird highlighted, and the bird lands at the catcher's feet, and you can tell he spends just a few seconds looking down like, what the heck just happened?
Look it up. It's on Barstool Sports. Jared Carabas has retweeted it. He's looking behind him for the ball as it goes skipping by and can't figure out why until he looks down at his feet, takes a moment to register, and then he starts hot stepping around this bird that lands at his feet.
Check our Twitter feed. I will retweet it from the 2 Buck Sports Pod Twitter feed. Somebody Barstool said Zach Gallen, Randy Johnston, the bird.
R.I.P. to that bird out in Oakland. It's probably the most exciting thing that happens at that Oakland ballpark tonight in front of about 1,500 fans.
Yeah, the one fan that was there pregame to video it was the only fan that watched the game afterward.
Yeah, and it's just sad. What a poverty franchise that even while they're struggling to get attendance, you've seen the video, they still got ushers shooing people away from the entrance, making sure they're in the right seats. It's like, guys, this is why nobody comes to your games. It's a bad baseball team, poor ownership. You're leaving, and then you're going to go kick people out of standing in front of an entrance ramp when there's like 400 people there.
Oh, we're moving franchises. Nobody's coming to the games. All of our pets' heads are falling off.
Harry, I'll take care of it. All right, Drew, we might as well go ahead and get into the elephant in the room. We have had yet another disappointing video come out with Ja Morant. If you've been living under a rock for the last few days, you hadn't seen it. Ja was on an Instagram live, not his this time, but his buddy D-Tap, who has been involved in every single incident that Ja has been a part of, from the fight to the Pacers incident. He's banned from the forum for running his mouth. Now D-Tap was on Instagram live. They were dancing, having fun to a song. Turns to Ja, turns the camera back to him. He looks at Ja and then turns the camera briefly to Ja, holding up what looks like a grainy another pistol before he quickly turns the camera off. And Twitter does what Twitter does, and it was a screenshot within 30 seconds of it happening. And Ja has been suspended from all Grizzly activities until further notice.
Yeah, so see, Sunday was Mother's Day, so I woke up thinking I was going to have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
However, when I woke up, I had a notification that from a buddy who was the first one to send it to us, where Ja has flashed another gun. And you're right, the video was grainy, but let's be honest, it was a gun. I mean, it's clearly and obviously a gun. DTAP had gone live on Instagram and flashed over to Ja, and they were dancing in the car. You know, they had just left his sister's graduation, and flashed back over again, and Ja's got a gun in his hand, and his buddy, you know, tried to stop real quick. I mean, he knew that was not a good idea, and you know, Devontae Pack is the guy's name. He's caught a lot of flack, and rightfully so. You know, he was the one that was banned from the FedEx Forum for that Pacers incident where he shined a laser into the bus and everybody thought they were pointing a gun at him. You know, and it all started on that during that game where he got mouthy with Pacers players because he was sitting courtside and there was kind of a scuffle, just kind of bringing a lot of exposure to himself and his circle that included Ja, which is what we thought at the time, that Ja was just had some bad friends, you know. And this one's on Ja though. Like I'm not going to blame DTAP at all on this. Sure, maybe your friends would encourage you not to have a gun with you. However, in the state of Tennessee, you can lawfully carry a firearm with you in your car. Not smart to do per se, but I know in our southern roots where we're at, it is more than common to have a firearm in your vehicle for protection. And so
I'm a staunch defender of the Second Amendment. And so like Ja can carry whatever he wants. It's the context, right? He's already told Adam Silver he was going to clean his act up. Right. He's already been in trouble for it once. And your employers, the Grizzlies, Nike, and the NBA, all three have a pretty firm stance against firearms, on, especially the Grizz and the NBA, on trips, on social media, being seen with them. There's some pretty firm boundaries around that.
And that's what makes this one different. On one hand, it's not as bad because he's not in a nightclub. He didn't take a team plane out to Denver.
Right.
He's in his personal vehicle or DTAP's vehicle. I don't know whose vehicle it was.
I think Ja was driving.
Yeah. Either way, it doesn't matter. Private property. It's stupid because don't ever flash your gun at anybody. That's one thing I was taught as a kid from my dad, who is also a staunch Second Amendment guy. Don't pull a gun unless you got to use it. You know, it's stupid. On the other hand, what makes this infinitely worse, which is common sense, is that you've done this before. You've apologized for this. You've seek treatment because of this. And I did air quotes because he did 2 days of treatment, which was probably more of a publicity thing than anything. He has apologized. He has, said he was going to do better, but went and made it 2 months, and you've done it again. And so, the scary part is I don't know what's going to happen, because Nike got dangerously close to having some real hard conversations with Ja, or real conversations were had, I'm sure, but they were real close to making some real hard decisions after the first time with showing a gun in a nightclub. I don't know what happens. I mean, anything's on the table. He could lose his shoe deal. He's already lost $40 million in contract incentives because it cost him an All-NBA team. He could get suspended, and he could get suspended for a long time, which would mean he would, if he gets suspended for a long time, anything over 17 games, he's automatically, booted for all NBA consideration or any kind of postseason awards. Yeah. And so that's not hitting your contract incentive again. And so it's a mess. And there's really no one to blame here but Ja. And I'm going to stop shy of calling him an idiot. I mean, what he did was idiotic. This dude is a good kid who was raised from a good home that just seems like he's going through it right now. And he's got to get right. What he's done is inexcusable. It's stupid. It's immature. It's somebody that's just at best not thinking, but at worst doesn't care.
Yeah. And I think that's what bugs me the most. Like, even a child, for the most part, when they're chastised in a big public way or a big way, knows not to do it again. And for Ja to go out there, it feels almost like either self-sabotage or just complete lack of awareness. And again, money apparently is not a big incentive for him. He's already been suspended 8 games. And what I'm kind of hearing through the grapevine and seeing on Twitter and different things, they're looking at probably a 15 to 20 game suspension. And it just depends on whether or not they want to punish him further by keeping him off of postseason award lists again, which is the NBA's prerogative.
Well, let's be honest. If he's suspended 10 games, that probably takes him off the award list anyways, because he's not a guy that stayed healthy. He's not played 82 games ever.
Right.
He's never played 75 games or 70 games ever.
And even this year, he had the stats to be on an at least all NBA third team. You can't look at how he played and not put him on a third team. And it was a statement that they didn't put him on there. And so I think that something's going on. Something's up. Drew, on this podcast, not even 2 weeks ago, we did our Grizzlies exit interviews. I said, I don't want to hear Ja's name all summer. And it's not even officially summer yet. And we've already got an incident, right?
Yeah.
And so it's frustrating.
That episode was 2 weeks ago.
That's what I'm saying. 2 weeks ago. I said, I don't want to hear Ja's name all summer. And May 21st is officially summer. And we've already got an incident. And so, And I think what makes it even worse, and this obviously wasn't intentional, it's just dudes being dude, but like you look at Jaren's Instagram post and you look at Desmond's Instagram post lately, and like Jaren's just chilling with Brandon Clark, trying to get well. Des just had surgery, but before that was hanging out with Mikal Bridges. Like, they're just being dudes and they're just doing the right thing. Hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe Des is out recruiting Mikal Bridges to come to Memphis. Jaren is helping Brandon Clark buy a new car. He bought him a Corvette. It's a beautiful car if you didn't see it on Jaren and BC's Instagram. But those guys are like, they're just laying low and just enjoying life as young kids who are millionaires and with the world at their fingers. And then we have Ja, who's out sabotaging. And the last thing I'll say, I'll wrap up. Like, the two things that bug me the most is bad for the city of Memphis because there's already a bad reputation there. Right. We're not even 6 months removed from the young Dolph incident. And like, that's what people see and they think about Memphis. And it sucks that this perpetuates that false idea of what Memphis actually is. It's a great blue collar city with a rich history, food scene, music scene. And then number two, it hurts the Grizz in free agency because if I'm a big time free agent and I'm looking for a team to go win a championship, I look at Memphis with this young core. I'm like, man, that's a great opportunity. But who knows if Ja's going to be there the full season, or is Ja going to get suspended, or whatever's going to happen. Like, that's not a good look. I still think we'll trade Tyus. I don't think it messes with our trade options very much, but I could see it impacting some of our free agent signings because of the instability it creates.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And obviously, they're going to wait until they find out what the punishment is before they make any final decisions. Mm-hmm. I agree with you about Tyus. I think that to meet your long-term goals, you do go ahead and put Tyus on the block and see what you can get for him, unless he gets suspended for like 40 games. Then you pivot. To close out for me, it's just disappointing. You hit on a couple of topics I wanted to hit on. There was so much. The end of the season was hard, and there was a lot of reasons to be optimistic this last week for what you just said. You've got Dez taking selfies with Mikal Bridges, and not that Mikal Bridges can make the trade happen, but that there's a relationship there, and it's something to get excited about. And this is such a team that's been so low key for so long, and you've got a group of guys that don't go out. That was kind of the whole thing. It's like we were a low key team. We talked a lot of trash, but that's just being competitors. But now you've got a bunch of guys in a locker room that are all good guys for the most part, that of anyways. And then you've got Ja, and I'm scared that you lose the locker room. You saw a culture problem at
There
the
were
end of the
cracks in the
season,
foundation at the end of the year.
and
Absolutely.
everybody wanted to blame that on Dylan. But now that it's happened again, John's going to get that, and rightfully so. I mean, it's come out. We've talked about on this podcast that right before he went out in Denver, that Steven Adams held a players-only meeting saying we need to be more responsible when we're on the road. Our road record sucks, and it's because we party too hard. I believe that's one person, and he didn't care, and he went out and he flashed a gun in a nightclub. And so culture only goes as far as your star player. Just like winning in the NBA, you only go as far as your star player. Coaches get the grief if the team sucks, and the player gets all the credit if the team wins.
Yep.
And the culture will go no further than Ja Morant allows it to. And so he's got to get his head on straight. And nobody's asking him. I am not asking him to be a saint. Yeah. I know $200 million affords you a lot of luxuries, and you can do a lot of stuff.
Yep.
However, you've got to let business be business and pleasure be pleasure, and you can't let pleasure affect business. Yeah. I don't care if you're an upstanding citizen. I've said this, and sports are icky, and I don't. My favorite team just employed an alleged wife beater, spouse abuser, as their basketball coach. And sports is about winning. I mean, that's what it is, and it's not right, but that's the business. And so I don't ever ask Ja to be perfect or go to church every Sunday or, feed the hungry. I just ask him to stay out of trouble. Don't make the story about you, and just be there for your team. Be as good a basketball player as you can be. Stay out of trouble, and the other guys will follow behind you. But you've got a lot of young guys on this team, and we don't need them following behind our star player right now.
No, it's kind of painfully obvious that this is right now is Jaren and Dez's team. They're the leaders that are showing up. They're the ones doing the right thing, and Josh has got to get himself together. Johnny's get off and stay off social media. Nothing good has happened on social media. Nothing good ever happens on social media, but especially these two incidents with Ja. And just get his head right, man. Take the summer, get in the gym, get in the lab, work out with some guys. Reconnect with Jaren and Dez because they used to hang out a lot in their early in their careers, and they haven't been as much. Ja's been more with his little inner circle there, and just get your act right before we start, fall camp later, summer camp later this year.
How do you think he can get back on the right side of the narrative? Do you think there's anything that can happen other than just staying out of trouble for an extended amount of time?
I don't think he can go donate all the money in the world to anti-gun violence or the city of Memphis and all that, and it may help a little. But unless he goes an extended period without a boneheaded incident, I don't think so.
I think I agree with you. I think the only solution here to rehabbing your image is to just not get in trouble, and let your basketball play. And you're absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
you're an incredible basketball player. That is a message. That is your path forward, and you can do it better than 99.9% of anybody on this world. And so just go do that. And
I got the notification the other night on like those Instagram memories of when I posted that we had gotten the second pick, and then we had taken Ja Morant with that second pick, and just how excited you and I were via text that night. And my buddy Micah, big Grizz fan, he and I were talking about it. Like, they're so excited around that. I miss those days, and I think we can get back to that if he just behaves, just gets his head right, stays off social media for a while.
Well, this will be a good segue into our next topic, because I'm sure we're going to talk about the draft lottery that happened last night.
Yeah.
But I remember where I was at that draft lottery. Hope springs eternal when you're in the lottery. You come off of, when you're in the lottery, you're coming off a season that's a disappointment, and all you can do is look forward to the draft lottery because maybe that's your savior.
Right.
And the Grizzlies played out that season with DeLon Wright and some guys and tried to win as much as they could, and they ended with the 9th or 10th best odds at the number one pick. And so when that draft lottery comes, they start at 14, and what you want to hear when they get to pick 10 where you're supposed to pick is any other team. Because if it's any other team, that means you've got a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
And in that draft, it was Zion, Ja, or RJ Barrett.
Yeah.
And when we were not there at pick 10, it was absolute hysteria in
Yeah.
my apartment in Jackson, Mississippi by
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
I was dating Haley at the time. I called her. I was like, you just got to listen to me react to this because this is the big, and she didn't care anything about
Yeah.
it at the time. And I remember when the third pick got posted
Yeah.
and it was the Knicks, and I was like, crap, we're going to get Zion. That's what I was thinking. I want Zion. I want Zion. And then the Grizzlies show up with a second pick, and I kind of dropped my head for a minute, like, oh crap, we didn't get Zion. And then like a half second later, it's like, we got Ja.
Yeah.
And from that moment to 6 weeks ago,
Yeah.
it's climbed,
Yeah.
And we can
I'm
get
like you.
back there.
I remember where I was at. I remember my buddy Mike and I. Twitter was blowing up. Like I kind of had that same moment of, man, we didn't get Zion. But as soon as I pulled up Twitter and everybody's talking Ja Morant, you look up his highlight reel, you figure out like, holy smokes, like this guy is a dude and it's got real potential. And of the three, so far production wise, and I think we got the best pick going away if he can just get out of his own way. Zion had been healthy. RJ hasn't really panned out. Josh just got to get out of his own way, and he could be a generational type talent.
So far, it's been KD, Greg Oden level of disparity between 1 and 2,
right?
Or Michael Jordan versus Portland. That's that. I mean, that tells you, okay?
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
I have forgotten his name, but it'll come to me in a minute. But that's how fortunate we were. You look at how it's all worked out. In that Kevin Durant draft, the Grizzlies did not win the lottery. They had the worst record in the league, and they got the 4th pick.
Yeah.
If they got the first pick, they could have gotten Kevin Durant. I mean, they would have taken Greg Oden.
Yeah.
Instead, we got the 4th pick, and we got somebody whose number will be retired in FedEx Forum within the next few years, Mike Conley. If we got the number 1 pick in Jaren's draft, we would have taken DeAndre Ayton, and we all know who that would have been.
So. It's not going well for those of you not watching the NBA right now. But yeah, perfect segue into last night. We got the draft order last night. Number 1 fell to the San Antonio Spurs. They won the Wembanyama sweepstakes. For those of you who don't really know, he's a French basketball player. Woj called him one of the greatest, if not the greatest, basketball prospect of all time. The guy's 7'4" with a 7'9" wingspan. He moves really well. He's smart. He's just skinny, and he needed a place where he could go develop. And Drew and I have talked about this a little bit off air. Like the big 3 that really had a shot, or the big 4, was Detroit, Portland, Charlotte, and San Antonio. And those of you even casual NBA
and
fans,
Houston had
that's right. I forgot those.
The 3 teams with the best chance was Houston, Detroit, and San Antonio.
That's right. Yeah. And those of you even casual basketball fans know that San Antonio has developed some of the greatest players of all time. Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, these guys that were Bruce Bowen, Robert Horry, these guys that are relatively unknowns that became these legendary basketball players, versus the Charlotte Hornets, the Detroit Pistons, who have a storied history, but a remote history outside of one-off an NBA title back in the early 2000s because of Ben Wallace and his afro, and the Houston Rockets, who have not been great recently. And so best case scenario for Wemby was to go to San Antonio, and that's exactly what happened last night.
Yeah, so if you looked at the reactions, so the last 2 picks, or the last 3 picks, because Detroit fell all the way to 4, Houston was 3rd, and when the Houston card was pulled, you saw Wembanyama. There was a camera on him, and he fist bumped. He did not want to go to Houston. Mm-hmm. And then Charlotte got the number 2 pick. That's just a poverty franchise. Michael Jordan has done such a poor job there as the owner that he's selling it. And that meant San Antonio. And if you saw the camera that ESPN had on him when they pulled the San Antonio card, it was pure elation, and for good reason. You have just noted how well they have done developing players. One more layer to that is they were one of the first franchises to go foreign with their players. Mm-hmm. They've got Tony Parker, who is French, who is arguably a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. Tim Duncan is from a Caribbean island, like
right.
Barbados. Where's he from?
Yeah, something like that. I mean, he was a swimmer in college,
Right. At Wake
and
Forest.
yeah, and so they had the best track record of any team that was in the lottery. If you're in the lottery, typically you stink. That's how it works. And for San
The
Antonio
Grizzlies were
to
there
take
for a number of years.
yeah, for them to take a 1-year hiatus from competing for a playoff spot to get Victor Wembanyama, that's just an absolute hit. I mean, it could not have worked better for Wemby. Uh, I will say that, as a Grizzlies fan, I'd rather him gone to somewhere in the East.
Yeah.
But,
As a fan
it's
of basketball.
yeah, for a fan of basketball to have him coached by Popovich in that organization with the culture that they have, it is the best for his career. I would be stunned if we have a Greg Oden situation,
Yeah.
or you so many times players are mismanaged because of injury, especially at that height. They'll do right by him. He will, if he is going to thrive in the NBA, like Woj says, like every analyst who's slobbering right now says that he will. He will reach his max potential at San Antonio, and that's good for basketball.
I agree. It's good as a basketball fan to see great players go to great organizations to be developed. And let's see could he be the next, Wilt Chamberlain, LeBron James, Michael Jordan? I don't know, but I think he has a better shot of being that in San Antonio than he does in Charlotte or in Detroit or Houston or even Portland.
Portland has a bad run of big man injuries
Yeah.
with Greg Oden, like we've mentioned, and Bill Walton.
And don't forget, they had Brandon Roy, who's one of the best, like just pure shooting guards with back in the long shorts era, and that knee just never would heal. And so, is that like the Tennessee Titans struggle with injuries because of a poor strength and conditioning staff? Is that what it is? Who knows? All I know is San Antonio and Pop get the best out of people. The rich get richer. And I think this is a good opportunity for Wemby to develop and to watch Ja put him on a poster for the next, 10, 12 years.
Yeah. And as a Grizzlies fan, I'm not going to be mad that I get to watch him play more. Maybe it's a war down the road for Western Conference Finals, but great. Isn't that who you want to go against?
Let's go.
As a Grizzlies fan, you watched LeBron for the bulk of his career playing the East, and if he came to Memphis, he probably wasn't playing. You're not going to get that from Wemby. If he's playing, he's going to be playing against Memphis, because even though divisions don't matter for standings anymore, they're in the same division. You play them 4 times a year.
Yeah.
You're going to see Wemby play in FedEx Forum.
And it'd be great watching. I think Jaren can match up with him. Wemby's got some height on him, but that's going to be Defensive Player of the Year, Jaren Jackson, against a potential offensive weapon.
Future Defensive Player of the Year in Wemby. Yeah.
I mean, that could be a phenomenal matchup, man. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Expectations like that always give me pause.
Sure.
Just because how often, in our lifetime, only one person has gotten the kind of hype that Wemby's gotten and lived up to it, and it's LeBron James.
Right.
And you're saying that Wemby as a prospect is the best prospect since Lou Alcindor?
Yeah.
That's saying he's a better prospect than LeBron James. That is
bold talk.
For a 7'5" guy.
Yeah.
Yao Ming is a Hall of Famer at 7'5", but his career was not long.
No, and you think about other guys that are 7'5" plus, Sean Bradley, Manute Bol, Taco Fall, like these guys just don't typically pan out.
Yeah, and he's special. He is far and away better than any of those players you just mentioned, skill-wise.
Absolutely.
But, you've got it seems like the longer those ligaments are, the easier they are to tear. So
we need to do a whole episode on injuries, because as a PT, I can talk about why that's the case. But I'll save you tonight, and we're going to wish the best on Wemby's knees and feet for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see him have a great career, and I want to see some wars with him, because he is a generational talent, and we don't root for injuries on this podcast.
No, we do not. And I want them healthy, and I want to watch them have a good long career. But speaking of long careers, we've had some careers shortened. We're going to transition a little bit, talk about some NBA coaching vacancies. And I just got a hypothetical for you. So Black Monday, Black Friday hit hard this weekend. There's that Black Sunday at the end of the NFL season when all the coaches get their walk-in papers. Well, we had that this weekend at the end of at some of the road for some of these big-time coaches. And The last 3 seasons, the teams with the best record no longer have their head coach. Budenholz from Milwaukee's gone. Doc Rivers is gone from Philly. Monty Williams is gone from Phoenix. And then Nick Nolte in Toronto, so a former NBA.
Nick Nolte?
Sorry,
Oh
completely
my
messed that
goodness.
name up.
Nick Nolte was the head coach of the Raptors?
Wow, what a bad drop there.
Nick Nurse.
Thank you. Golly.
Good grief.
You
couldn't have been more wrong about that one.
It has been a week, man. I said it so confidently too.
Well, there's the title of the podcast right there.
Yeah, Nick Nolte for head coach. Yeah. Thank you. I was in the ballpark. Nick Nurse. So, have lost their jobs as NBA head coaches in a very much what have you done for me lately league. And so, what are you just off the cuff first thoughts on some of these vacancies, some of these coaches being fired? Anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a "what have you done for me lately" thing, and it's very much a it's very much how have you done in the playoffs. So you look at Doc Rivers. I wish I had the stats in front of me, the exact stats, but basically, he has lost more 3-1 series leads than anybody ever. He's lost more 3-2 series leads than anybody ever. And Joel Embiid is the first MVP to not make it to the conference finals.
You stole my thunder. My joke was going to be when we talk about the conference finals that we're still here, unlike the NBA MVP. But go ahead.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that writing was on the wall. Yeah. I mean, that he was going to be gone. They did it 2 years in a row. At some point, you just need a new voice in the locker room.
And Doc Rivers also, you didn't mention, he's also the worst all-time head coach in Game 7. So he's something like 0 for 10 or 0 for 9. He's never, like his Game 7, he's so bad in Game 7s.
And that's just not acceptable. I mean, Doc Rivers was named as one of the top 15 coaches of all time with that on his resume and won championship. Like that's
is hard to believe. Yeah. But then again, like I think you and I could have won a championship with that Celtics team. I mean, with 3 generational talents,
right?
It just hadn't done much else. I'll to be honest, I'm not a huge Doc Rivers fan. I think he's a good coach, but I'm not like he's not.
No, I mean, I think he's an overrated coach. That's coaching in big markets. You know.
Yes.
Nick Nurse is surprising to me. He has won a championship at Toronto. It hasn't gone well the last 2 seasons.
Right.
I think unquestionably he's one of the best coaches in the league.
He's already the front runner for the Milwaukee job.
Right. Budenholzer was surprising to me because just 2 years ago he won a championship. Mm-hmm. The Giannis statements after they lost in the first round to Miami did not help. You know, he made the comment that they should be more creative offensively.
Mm-hmm.
And then Monty Williams, again, you got blown out in back-to-back playoff elimination games.
First coach to lose 2 back-to-back elimination games by, I think, 30 plus in NBA history.
Yeah, that was embarrassing, and that was a new owner as well. Yeah. And so
you knew the lease was going to be short there, particularly because they pushed all their chips in the middle of the trade deadline, right? They went all in on KD and this season, and then for it to fizzle out and get blown out by the Nuggets is not how he saw that going.
Yeah, and of course Dwayne Casey was out at Detroit. He's been out, you know. It's interesting. I think you could
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Have you seen the front runner for the Raptors job, whose name keeps coming up?
Yeah, I saw JJ Redick interviewed for it.
And
for the Raptors?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've seen another name.
She has already addressed it in a press conference. Becky Hammond is getting a lot of traction that she could be the first female head coach for the Toronto Raptors.
Who is currently just got suspended for 2 games for making some kind of disparaging comment about one of her players who just had a baby or something in contract talks. And so you don't have to deal with that if you go to the NBA.
Yeah, but, exactly.
So what I think you could see is just a big musical chairs. I mean, I don't think, with the exception of Doc Rivers, and I don't think he's that great of a coach, Bud, good coach. Monty Williams, good coach. Nick Nurse, good coach.
Yeah.
I mean, Budenholzer, sorry, Nick Nurse was, rumored to go to, be a favorite in Milwaukee. Um, Philly's going to have talks with all those folks.
I wouldn't be
Philly actually,
surprised to see Doc Rivers surface in Phoenix with KD and Chris Paul.
I mean, yeah, but you know how Doc Rivers and Chris Paul ended in the playoffs every year as well.
That's fair.
For the Clippers. I don't know. A name to watch is Ty Lue.
Yeah.
I think that he is going to leave.
Yeah.
If given the opportunity to leave. He is one of the top 5 best coaches and game managers in the NBA.
No doubt.
And if you could get Ty Lue to coach Giannis, or you get Ty Lue to Toronto, where they've just got a ton of young talent, or Phoenix with Kevin Durant, I mean, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens. You've got this year more than ever. You've got big jobs open.
Mm-hmm.
And
do you think Taylor Jenkins gets a call for any of the jobs?
No, I don't think so. You just don't see that very often in the NBA. And the only job that would make me nervous would be Milwaukee, because that's where he came from. History.
That's the only thing I thought of.
But that works against him as well, because he's from the Budenholzer tree, but they just fired Budenholzer.
Right.
So I think that he's good enough, and I think he's got the cachet to get an interview if he wanted one. But one, I don't think he wants one, and because if that information gets out, especially as volatile as the Grizzlies locker room is right now, it's just not good for the team, and you couldn't come back from it. It's one of those things, if you're going to interview for the job, you better take it, kind of thing.
Yep.
So no, I don't think that Taylor Jenkins goes anywhere. Mainly, and his playoff record doesn't help much either.
Right.
And so,
season coach. But hypothetically, if he got an interview of the coaches that are available, who would you want in Memphis?
Nick Nurse. Yeah, absolutely.
Nick Nurse and Monty Williams would be my first 2 answers.
Yeah, Monty Williams kind of. Sometimes I think he's too good of a guy. He got walked over a lot at Phoenix, and of course that may be just the culture. I mean, with the owner that hired him, that ultimately got fired for being a horrible person. I'm happy with Taylor Jenkins. I want to keep Taylor Jenkins. First.
I'm not saying I want him gone for our listeners. Right. And Coach Taylor, if you're listening to this, I know you're a big fan of the podcast. I don't want you gone.
Come on sometime. We'd love to have you.
Love to have you.
We won't talk about any of Ja's off the field issues.
None.
And so, I mean, it's interesting because you've got big market job, or not big market jobs per se, but big time jobs with big time stars on the team that are looking for coaches.
And even Toronto, like as bad as they've been the last couple of years, they're only a piece or two or a coach away from like being right back in the thick of the East again, because they do have some young talent in OG who might be a future Grizz, Gary Trent Jr. Like there's some good jobs out there, and James Harden wants out of Philly, but you still have the NBA MVP, and I'm using air quotes there, and Joel Embiid and some good players and Moxie that can score. I mean, Philly is still right in the top of the East, even without James Harden.
Yeah, you go coach James Harden and expect a championship at your own, on your own dime.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not going to back that.
He's already
small game. James came up again, went 3 for 11 in an elimination game.
And oh my gosh, read the room, because then you got Joel Embiid in his post-game interview saying we need our teammates to step up. If I'd have been D'Anthony Melton or somebody, I've been standing in the locker room pointing at the stat sheet, reminding him that he and James Harden went 5 for 29 in an elimination game. Missed me with that. I need my teammates to step up.
Yeah, Joel Embiid's kind of taking a heel turn, because he was always like the ultimate team guy. He mouthed the right message in post game. He always took the blame as a star player. I got to be better. This last couple of years, I guess him not getting the MVP, he kind of heel turned a little bit, and he totally threw his general manager and his teammates under the bus, saying me and James can't do it ourselves, which is fine. You go say that if you carried your end of the bargain.
If you're throwing a triple-double or a 30-piece every night, and he had the worst regression in NBA history. He dropped by almost 10 points per game. His free throws went down almost 8, which is a sign of the NBA doesn't call quite as much of the flops in the playoffs they do in the regular season. Right. But he regressed way back from the regular season to the playoffs. you do not then have the right to sit up there at that microphone, not that you ever would in a team sport, and throw your teammates under the bus. Like, it's just such a bad look for an MVP that a lot of people didn't think deserved the MVP to begin with, when you've got a walking triple-double still playing in the conference finals.
Yeah, and it's not like Lucas saying he doesn't have any help in being right.
Right.
Before the Kyrie trade,
Yeah.
Luka never had any help. Philly went out and got James Harden for him. That was Joel Embiid had to say in that.
Yep.
They've done stuff to make Embiid happy, as they should have. And to just go up there and kind of wave that off like it didn't happen, and despite having the worst game of the series in an elimination game, Game 7, it's just it doesn't sit well with me. And still love Joel Embiid. He's still a ton of fun to watch for me. And I love DeAnthony Melton. He did what he does in the playoffs as well. What he does best. Yeah, not show up.
Vacate.
And so, yeah. So back to the coaches. It'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah.
I think you could just have a bunch of musical chairs, or you're going to have some good coaches that are just analysts next year, which is, Doc Rivers should probably go apply to be on Inside the NBA on TNT.
What I was just about to say. Go ahead and put him up there with Shaq and Charles Barkley, and let him kind of egg them guys on. But but speaking of basketball, we still got basketball being played, man. And a quick little sidebar, it surfaced up again this week. One of my favorite Nikola Jokic stories is Jokic is.
We'll have to get you a pronunciation guide.
Listen, man, I went to public school, state of Mississippi, man. Come on. But Jokic went on. So he was they were playing the Jazz a couple years ago, and Jamal Murray was on a podcast and was talking about it. And he passes the ball into the Joker, who catches the ball just outside the post, and Gobert, who was the reigning defensive player of the year at the time, runs up to him yelling, "I got him, I got him, I got him." And as they make contact, and late in the game, again, Jokic has the ball and says, "Brother, I have 47." The most calm demeanor, like, what do you want from me, right? Like, you don't got nothing. I've got 47. I can score as many as I want. And he was on display again last night with a massive triple-double, 30-plus points, 20-plus rebounds, 14 assists. Just had a day last night. As the Nuggets hung on, they had a massive lead, had over 100 at the end of the third, and ended up winning by less than 10. I think it was a 7 or 8 point ball game, 6 point ball game.
Yeah, it was a 3-point game late with the Lakers having the ball. Yeah, so Jokic had he had 34, 21, and 14, which is just incredible. And he is the best player on the planet. Joel Embiid got the MVP this year, and sure, he deserved it, rather than give Jokic 3 in a row. But Jokic is the best player in the league, and the player that's probably the X factor, according to most people, was Anthony Davis in this series. In the playoffs, when he's been great, the team has won, and when he's been bad, the team has lost. I mean, it's that simple when it comes to the Lakers. It's totally dependent on how Anthony Davis does. Last night was the exception. He had 40 points on 23 shots and 10 rebounds, and during the course of the game, the Lakers were down 21. They did come back and make it competitive and had a shot to win, and they needed every bit of it from AD, and it was short. So could it be that everybody has slept on the best team in the West, the number 1 seed in the playoffs?
Somehow.
Yeah, somehow we've let our ESPN narratives sway what really we should have expected out of the series.
Because they were drooling over LeBron and his legacy, and this might be his best championship and all this, and completely forgetting that they had to play at Denver. And that's what's tough. I was texting with a buddy today. They took AD's best shot. And so far in the playoffs, like you were saying, when AD has a monster game, they win. We had a monster game last night, and it wasn't enough because Jokic was doing his thing. Jamal Murray had a good game. They were distributing the basketball. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope had his revenge game last night. KCP just was going off in the third and fourth quarter, just draining threes left and right on his former team, the Lakers. And it was like they forgot that the Nuggets were a really good basketball team. Because if you watched any of the talking heads for the last week, it has been all Laker talk. And the Nuggets took that insert Michael Jordan meme here. They
Right.
took that personally.
Yeah, and the Nuggets didn't exactly make it easy on themselves late. They let Anthony Davis guard Aaron Gordon in the corner for the whole game, which led to Anthony Davis just being able to play free safety back there
Yeah.
instead of putting Aaron Gordon in motion on offense or using him as a screener and pick and rolls. They really exposed themselves, and it showed it late when the Lakers started making their comeback.
Yep.
And so,
Absolutely.
look, you've got to fix that. And if they fix that, I mean, this may be a lopsided series. However, I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself because, as the old adage is, the series don't start till someone loses at home.
Yep.
And you see, Golden State did it in their first round series against Sacramento, where they lost both games in Sacramento to start the series, only to even the series on their home court, defending their home court. And so the series
There's the
don't
best
start
of
till you
three.
lose at home. It's not going to be a sweep. It's not going to be done in 5. It's going to be a competitive series, and we'll see what happens. But I do believe, while saying that it'll be competitive, that people have really just kind of the narrative, because Vegas didn't back it up, but the narrative really disrespected the Nuggets
Yeah.
because they're good. I mean, they're
They're
real good, and
they're
they're good because of Jokic.
Yeah. He makes that team go, Drew, but they are deep in their role players. KCP, Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray. They've got Uncle Jeff Green. They've got some guys who are good role basketball players. And the Lakers have been riding the hot streak of Austin Reeves and Rui Hashimura for a long time. And those guys are going to come back. They're going to regress to the mean at some point. And they didn't have the best games last night. Reeves hit some big shots late to get him back in it. Rui was better on defense last night than he was offense. There was a stat today that I think he defended Jokic like 3 times, and he was like 0 for 3 on field goals. So put Rui on for the rest of the series, which is a terrible idea. But the Nuggets just have some role players that are clutch. They play really good basketball, and they had a chip on their shoulder last night, I think, because they came in disrespected. They were the underdog as the 1 seed in the eyes of the media. They were the underdog on their home court where they are, undefeated. They in the playoffs, like they maul people in Denver. The altitude, Jokic, whatever. Again, it's going to be a competitive series, but I think it's one that Denver's going to win in the long run.
I agree with you. What are your thoughts on the series that is underway? Game 1 is underway right now between Boston and Miami. You got any overarching thoughts as themes for this series? What you're looking for?
I think Boston obviously is the better team. Jason Tatum, in a weird interview, said I'm humbly one of the best basketball players in the world in a game where he started like 3 for 19, ended up with a decent game, and then only to follow that up with a game 7 performance of a lifetime with 51 in an elimination game against the Sixers, and just completely back that talk up. So kudos, Jason Tatum. They're finally healthy really at the right time. I kind of want to see Jimmy Butler play for a title again, man. I love Jimmy Butler. I sent you the video of him on Instagram. It's Jimmy Butler Day. Like, I love Jimmy Butler. He's great content. He's a walking bucket in big games. I just don't think Miami has enough to keep up with the C's. I really don't.
Yeah, to take it back to your Jason Tatum, his comment that he made, I loved it personally because it was a humble statement, and it was showing his mindset, and it's what the mindset that I hope Ja has one day if he's got an off day. When you can look at yourself and it's like, man, I'm not shooting the ball well. This is a potential. I mean, we've got to have this game to force a game 7. They were down 3-2. I don't have it today, and he just said to himself, I'm one of the best players in the league. Have confidence and shoot the ball like you're going to make it. And in that fourth quarter, he went totally berserk. Conversely, Philadelphia peed down their leg.
Yeah, because Jason Tatum outscored the Sixers by himself.
Yeah, they just absolutely wet the bed. And then to go out in Game 7 and have 51 points, set the NBA record for most points in a Game 7, and just rip their heart out. It was
that game was over at halftime. He had 25 at halftime, and they could have called the series then.
Yeah. As for the series, storyline wise, sure, it would be nice to see the 8 seed Miami Heat knock off the Celtics. However, I'm rooting for the Celtics for one reason, and it's because I want the regular season to matter.
Yeah.
I don't, Miami coasted, and the same thing the Lakers did, the same thing the Warriors did. What's left in these semifinal matchups, you've got the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Celtics, and the Heat. 2 of the 4 teams, one from each side, mailed it in during the regular season. They rested, they took their time, and entered the postseason way underseeded, and are playing their best basketball of the season. That's Miami and LA.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other side, you've got Boston and Denver, who played like every game mattered in the regular season. And just mentality-wise, I appreciate that. I respect that. And that's what I want to see in the finals. And that's what I'm rooting for. And
I think that's a great matchup. Denver and Boston is an intriguing matchup. Al Horford is a good defensive center. He's not as big, but he can defend really well. But then you got who's going to, answer for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think that's a very intriguing. It could be a very fun NBA Finals matchup. May not be the flashy Lakers Celtics all-time rivalry,
right.
but it could be a very fun NBA Finals to watch.
Yeah. I'm excited. I think both sides of this semifinals are going to put on a very good show for everybody. And I do love Jimmy Butler too. I just wish that he gave a crap about the regular season.
There's going to be one game though where he's going to score like 60 points, and there's going to be nothing Boston can do about it, and I'm here for it.
Oh yeah, it'll be competitive.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, I think it'll be Denver and Boston playing for a NBA title. But I think we got some competitive, fun basketball games ahead of us to watch over the next couple of weeks. But speaking of fun, competitive games and teams not mailing it in, we'll shift gears for the last few minutes of the podcast. If you're still here, please hang around. College baseball time, because this is a college baseball podcast after all, though we spent the vast majority tonight talking about the NBA. Your Mississippi State Bulldogs had a great weekend. We came in just limping, tail between our legs, no pun intended, but just getting embarrassed left and right. Fired Scott Foxhall, our pitching coach, and LSU had to go play at the box, which is notoriously, it's a small field. LSU hits the ball out of the park all over the place. And Bulldogs found a way to win in a frustrating way and an exciting way. Twofold there, right? It's frustrating because it's like, where has this been all year, right? We went to the number 2 team in the country's backyard and took 2 out of 3 of them in game 3 in dramatic fashion after being down 13-4. Came back and won in extras 14-13, snapping off a line drive and picking off somebody at first. Great series win, great momentum win. And Drew, we quoted Dumb and Dumber earlier. I'm going to pull it up again. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Thought you were going to say, it's a cardigan, but thanks.
But thanks for asking. But Mississippi State has an outside minuscule blue moon. Mercury needs to be in microwave, and whatever happens for it to happen. But Mississippi State can.
Microwave?
That's what they do.
I think you mean retrograde. You
Whatever. Whatever.
Mercury in microwave.
Somebody needs to put Mercury in the microwave.
Moron. Mercury's got to be in microwave.
That's it. For Mississippi State.
Put Mercury in a microwave, people.
Bad idea. That is not a recommendation of the Two Bucks Sports Podcast.
In the podcast. Good grief.
But we got a chance. So Mississippi State needs to sweep A&M this weekend, and either Missouri needs to get swept by Auburn, or Georgia needs to get swept. I forgot who they're playing. I saw it earlier, but Georgia needs to get swept. If both those things happen, Mississippi State will backdoor into the SEC tournament, which again is, we were talking about this, this is it's a
remember what we're talking about here.
It's a storied program that's trying to backdoor their way into Hoover, not even like a regionals, but trying to get to Hoover for the SEC tournament. because they take all but the last two teams, and so we're definitely in the cellar.
Georgia plays LSU at home.
So there you go. So there's a real chance that Georgia gets swept in that game in a revenge series, but we've got to take care of business this weekend against A&M, who has not been a great baseball team, but better than us. So if those two things happen and Mississippi State goes to Hoover, and then we go 0-2 and we'll go home. That's it. We'll go 0-2.
No, you don't even have to go 0-2. It's single elimination first.
Well, that's right, when you're at the bottom seed. But look, just get there, because crazy things happen. Q Ole Miss last year. You're going to bring it up at some point. But, like, crazy things happen if you just get there, right? You have to win like 5 games in 5 days or 6 games in 6 days or whatever to get to the championship game, which this team does not have the pitching depth to do that. We don't have the pitching depth to come out of Mississippi 3A baseball right now, high school baseball. But crazy things happen. You get hot at the right time. You never know until you get there. And so the fact that we had such an abysmal season and yet we still have an opportunity to get there, it's a win for the season. Again, in the grand scheme of things and in what is a storied baseball program, it's trash. Like, we should not be here. This should not be a conversation. We should be in the conversation for hosting a regional, not trying to backdoor into Hoover. But I'm proud of the boys for fighting. I'm proud of the team for finding some guts towards the end of the year when they could have just absolutely mailed it in like some other teams in the state of Mississippi have. They found a way to win, and we got a monster win. Lost Friday night against Paul Skeens in a competitive game. Won Saturday, Sunday. Let's go take care of business as A&M. Get a new pitching coach. I think Limo has saved his job at least for another year. Let's end this season on a high note, sweeping A&M. Go lose our game in Hoover. Call it a season.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you've got your high hopes and you're running simulations to see how you can make it to Hoover kind of puts a nail on what this season has been for the both of us.
Right.
You know, Ole Miss is able to move on because we're, you know, it's not going to happen. It's mathematically impossible for us to make it to Hoover. And it sucks. You know, we'll kind of recap the season maybe once it's over.
Yeah.
However, you know, we thought the Ole Miss baseball season would end Sunday in Alabama as the regular season ends. But however, Monday night, Ole Miss will be on the SEC network. Have you seen this?
Mm-mm.
They'll be playing baseball on the SEC network in a documentary about the Ole Miss baseball team's run to a national championship last year. Last in, last out, featuring Ole Miss's first national title, premieres Monday, May 2nd on the SEC network. So tell me that I don't have anything baseball related to look forward to because in lieu of watching current baseball games that the Ole Miss baseball team is losing, I've been watching past baseball games in which Ole Miss wins a national championship in Omaha. And so this is our victory lap. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's not a victory lap. You know, the season, I'm not going to be as diluted as Rusty was last year to say we celebrated too hard. That's why we stink. No, we stink because we stink.
No, I said we stink because we stink. I just tried to make that was what helped me sleep at night.
I will not give anybody an out in saying that we just partied too hard, or you know, we took this season for granted because we won it all last year. Don't buy any of that. We're just not good, and it's on coaches, it's on players, it's on whoever you want to put it on. Everybody shares the blame, and next year you got to be better. You know, I do find great joy in Rusty trying to put all the tying all the yarn onto the points in the map, trying to find his way into the SEC tournament as a 12 seed, as if that gives him any hope of actually making the tournament. You're over here saying, like Ole Miss did last year, you just have to find a way to get in. No, sir. You have to find a way to get into the big tournament, not the SEC tournament.
Well, it starts by getting to Hoover. If you don't get to Hoover, you don't even go to the other one.
Yeah,
so.
I guess
one step at a time.
You can't be the last team in and the last team standing if you're not the last team into the real tournament.
Just get me to Hoover. Crazy things happen, man. Just get me to Hoover. The Colorado Rockies.
I will tell you what will not happen. If you'll allow me a few seconds, you will not be making it to the NCAA regionals. That will not be happening.
You never know.
I will eat my hat.
I will guarantee you we have a better shot if we make it to Hoover than if we go ahead and go to Cancun.
I mean, I agree with you there. I mean, math, you know, if you're playing, you still stand a chance. However,
It's
As
still
far as chances go, that's a pretty slim one.
It'll still be more postseason baseball than our in-state colleagues.
Oh, you're right. You know what? This will. And first off, the SEC tournament is not postseason baseball.
Sure, it is.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it is. No, it's the SEC tournament. It's after the regular season. That begins postseason baseball because it sets the stage for seeding. I'll tell you what.
If you make it to the weekend of the SEC tournament, hang a banner, okay? Say you finish Final Four in the SEC tournament and see how that goes.
No, we're not going to take it. We're not going to get the little fake ring. Like, did you see Auburn is celebrating their College World Series participation rings this weekend too? By the way, it's not just Arkansas. It's not just Arkansas. Auburn's doing it too. But like the SEC basketball tournament, that's postseason basketball. The SEC baseball tournament is postseason baseball.
It is not.
Oh my God.
It is not the postseason. It is not March.
It is the beginning of the postseason.
Which
yes, it is.
Does not matter unless the SEC tournament does not matter. And we've won an SEC title recently in baseball. It does not matter unless it gives you an automatic berth in. If you don't, you just watch. LSU and Vanderbilt will throw this tournament.
It matters because for teams like us that sneak in the back door this year, let's just say, like, hypothetical dream, like Candyland scenario, right? We backdoor in, we get hot, we win a few games, and it gets us into a regional. It matters to us. Sure, it doesn't matter to South Carolina, LSU, who are already going to host because they're one of the top teams in the country. They can mail it in. But it matters to teams fighting for a opportunity to play in a regional.
I will say, I'll ask you because you'll know. I'm looking up the standings here just to see your record. Mississippi State is currently 8-19. It does not matter how many games you win in Hoover unless you win the whole thing.
And you don't win the whole thing if you don't go.
Yes. And so it's just unimportant.
Listen, man, I'm just trying to find hope in an otherwise abysmal baseball season, and don't rain on my parade.
Just go ahead and enter into the abyss. It's not that bad.
Listen. Just know that Uncle Buck is the negative Nancy on this podcast. I'm trying to find some hope.
I'm being a realist. I mean, good grief. You're over here trying to plot points and to win an automatic bid by winning the SEC tournament in the SEC in which you are currently 8-19.
Crazier things have happened, man.
You're hoping.
Okay. Everybody has a bad day, man. You never know.
Yeah. Very, very few times do those bad days stretch into months. It
may be a bad series. Like, you never know who's gonna get food poisoning or not sleep well, or their hotel doesn't have AC. You never know what'll happen.
Yeah. There's a difference in the Miracle on Ice. The United States beat Russia. Well, the United States team was pretty dang good.
Yeah.
This is
Mississippi State team. We're not good. I'll be the first on record.
That's what I'm trying to get you to admit here. You're acting like you got a shot, and you're the false equivalency you've got going here was saying like, Ole Miss, all you got to do is get in. Yeah, well, you had to get into the tournament. We were squarely in the SEC
again. We won't get to a regional unless we get to Hoover. Just get to Hoover and let the cards fall as they may. We'll lose opening weekend, but at least we were there.
Rephrase for accuracy: you will not get to the regionals unless you win the SEC championship.
That's what I'm saying. Get to Hoover and let things happen.
Yeah. Well.
Listen,
don't stay up late at night to watch the games.
We're a terrible baseball team. If by some miracle we sweep A&M this weekend, which we've only won 2 series this year. Yeah. One of them was LSU and one of them was in March
against Ole
Miss. By some miracle that happens, whoever we play opening weekend, it's over. Like Cade Smith will go out and have a great game, and then the offense won't show up, and we'll lose like 2-1. Just because that's how our season's going. I am well aware that we're not going to make it out, but dadgummit, let's at least get to Hoover.
Yeah. Well, Ole Miss got swept this past weekend by Auburn on their senior night. So
yeah, Auburn's gotten hot, man. Auburn's playing some
top 25
baseball right now. Yeah. Butch Thompson's got them pointed in the right direction. And you're welcome. Mississippi State was the one that ignited that. They were sputtering until they took 2 out of 3 from us, and that was the launch pad. So any Auburn Tiger fans out there, you're welcome.
Yeah, Auburn's sitting at 14-13 in the SEC, 3rd place in the West.
30
And
and
so,
19 overall, man. They've
yeah,
had a good year.
they're going to make the tournament. Alabama's going to make the tournament at 13 and 14 unless they get swept this weekend
Yep.
against Ole Miss, which, I mean, let's be honest, it's not going to happen.
It could
So,
happen. You've
yeah,
seen teams like South Carolina's cooled off as of late. Those freshmen are kind of cooling off a little bit. Florida has really come on strong and is going to be a player in the SEC tournament and beyond. They've got some guys they can hit. But what's scary about Florida is as the year has gone on, their pitching has gotten better and better and better. And they've got some future studs in that rotation. That can really continue. And we all know once you get to the regionals, it's all about pitching. The teams who go the deepest are the teams with the best pitchers. 2 years ago, Will Bednar and Landon Sims carried us, along with Hootie and a couple other guys. But it's all about pitching once you get past the SEC play.
Yeah, and like I predicted to start this season, the SEC has cannibalized itself. You've got your outliers with Florida being 18 and 9 and South Carolina being 17 and 10. Arkansas is 19 and 8 and LSU 17 and 9. The rest of the SEC is at 15 wins or below in conference play going into the last weekend. And so
you got that backwards. Vandy is 17 and 10. South Carolina is 15 and 11.
Oh, I skipped Vandy over Vandy when I was reading it. But yeah, so Vandy is next in line. Vandy and Kentucky have 15 wins. The next SEC West team is Auburn with 14 wins. And so Auburn with a sweep, getting swept this weekend, would sit at 14 and 16, which would, if you go by last year's standards, that's what Ole Miss was, and they were the last team in the tournament.
Yeah.
So they've cannibalized themselves. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt. They're still going to get a lot of teams in.
We'll still have 4, 5, 6 teams in the tournament.
Rusty's big prediction to start the SEC season was that Missouri was going to finish second in the East. Let's not forget that.
No.
Yeah.
I said they were going to finish last in the East behind Georgia.
Oh, did you say? Okay.
I said Kentucky was going to finish second in the East. That's who it was Kentucky was my hot take in the East.
Well, that one hasn't been so bad then.
It hasn't been so bad. No, I had
15 and 12, fourth in
the worst teams are going to be Missouri, Georgia, Alabama, and Auburn, and I was wrong on the West. That's for sure.
Yeah, because it was me and you.
Cheers, buddy.
Yeah. I think that's all I've got for mine today. Do you have anything else you want to hit?
I know you mentioned something about Ole Miss basketball. Did we?
Oh yeah,
we'll talk a little bit about the transfer portal.
Yeah,
the State got a big transfer in a shooting guard from the Big East. Not as big as Ole Miss's, but had a big time commit. Kid out of the Big East. I'm blanking on it. I think it's from Temple. Let me pull it up. I'm pulling it up right now. But Chris Beard has been working the transfer portal like nobody's business. It's something that's how you build a program these days. Chris Jans, who signed a long-term deal, is doing a great job, and Starkville has hit the transfer portal some, not quite as much as some of our in-state counterparts, but got a big guy who can actually shoot, which is what we need in Mississippi State. We've got, rumors are Tolu Smith is coming back. We've got some guys that are going to return, but we needed some shooting. We needed some offense from the portal, and went out and got that. Got a good opportunity to continue to grow. And we'll just see what happens over the next few weeks as we, head into the quiet off season and spring training for college basketball. So we'll see. But Chris Beard been attacking the transfer portal, right?
Yeah. So I'm always kind of curious to how I was telling you off air before we got started. I would like to know, and it was before the transfer portal, but how Chris Beard built his teams when he took over, particularly at Texas Tech, his first big job. But so far, he has gotten Austin Nunez, a former 4-star point guard from Arizona State. He got Brandon Murray from Georgetown. He is a 4-star transfer. That's what he was graded as a transfer, as a 4-star. He's also gotten what is the biggest news, literally, is Musa Cisse, who is 7-foot center, formerly of Memphis, then formerly of Oklahoma State, and a even bigger guy, Jamarian Sharp from Western Kentucky, 2 7-foot-plus centers that he has gotten in the last week. Everybody's kind of still got their eyes on the Texas kid, the number 2 player in the country, who was committed to him at Texas. And and so kind of hoping he comes. But he's hit the transfer portal hard, which is really the only card he had to play in his first season here at Ole Miss. And so I've told you before, I've never been a big Ole Miss basketball fan, mainly because they've just been a bottom dweller and not ever been really anything to get excited about. But the capacity to care is there, and I'm starting to feel it a little bit. And it starts now with getting a little bit of excitement about the players on the roster. You did have the former four-star guard, the number one player in Mississippi, Deshaun Ruffin. He transferred out after bailing towards the middle of the season, just kind of walked off of campus. He is now at Jackson State. So you do have you need another dynamic scoring guard to fit in with these big guys. But if nothing else, we're going to put out a team out there that's going to be hard to score on, which is fun.
Yeah, for sure. And it's Andrew Taylor is a kid I was talking about. He was actually a Marshall transfer, which doesn't sound like a big deal in the Big South, but he was the only player in the country that had 20 points, 4.5 assists, 4.5 rebounds, and 2 steals per game last year. He's one of Marshall's all-time leading scorers. Kid could just fill up the bucket in the Sun Belt last year. Could be some scoring that we desperately need on offense. Tolu Smith, he comes back, will be big in the post for us, but we're going to have to do something to keep up. Ole Miss is obviously attacking the transfer portal pretty well. I'm curious to see, we've talked about this on the podcast with Lane Kiffin and what Ole Miss has done in the transfer portal in football versus, Mississippi State bringing up more kids out of high school. I'm curious to see over the next 5 to 10 years what the data shows. Is the transfer portal where you get better? Right now, it looks like Ole Miss is winning that battle, getting better in the transfer portal. We'll see what happens when they actually put them on the court.
Yeah. What we'll probably end up finding out is there's more than one way to skin a cat. You just got to be able to maneuver. Either way you do it, you got to maneuver it well. So
exactly. So,
all right,
that's all I got, buddy. So, man, I will see you next week. I am coming home next week to see the family for a few days. So, we will have our regularly scheduled program and be on the lookout for a special edition episode. We're still looking at what that's going to look like, what those details are. But Uncle Buck, I'm looking forward to whatever we come up with.
Absolutely, man. Everybody have a good week. Thank you for joining in with us, and we'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. See you guys.